Well, good evening, everyone. Let me just straighten up this camera here. This is Mel here from Sneakers Corner with our good friend Murad. How are you today, Murad?
Hello, Mel. It's great to be back again.
It's great to be back indeed. And I've been looking at your comments there for the last few minutes. Before we kind of go into the questions, there was a few comments on the pilgrimage, the Camino that I did during the summer. It's a pity about the camera work wasn't exactly the best. And I think Veronica mentioned about feeling seasick. And the frustrating thing was when I saw the video clips afterwards, I realized, I wish I'd brought a gimbal along just to have that steady picture. And I should have done something with the settings as well. But anyway, I suppose you get a sort of a sense of what went on. And hopefully it inspires others to do something similar. It was probably the best adventure I've done in my life. I have done other adventures. I usually cycle across Europe each summer, but yeah, I love a long trip somewhere like that, you know. And let's just have a look and see if there's a question. I saw a question at the top somewhere. Let me just see if I can find it. So I don't know if you see any questions. I thought I saw a question. Maybe it's disappeared off the screen. Sometimes the early questions just kind of go. Well, in any case, if you had a question and I can't see it, just repost it. That's probably the best thing. Right.
Hello, Dragon. Welcome to the show. She is a good friend.
Yeah. Hello, Dragon, indeed. There's a question here from Barry. Did Muhammad write the Quran?
Well, if you have been watching the channel, no one here thinks that Muhammad did write the Quran. Even in the earliest sources, you never get the idea that Muhammad wrote the Quran. So it might be compiled after his death and maybe attributed to him.
Yeah. I think it's pretty clear that there were different authors of the Quran. Now, I think Odin would make the argument that there were people living in the 630s, 640s, and from their writings, these are the preachers. From these writings came the sources for the Quran, which obviously was heavily edited and so on. But I'm going to be distracted by the chat here, so you'll forgive me. What is the scope and format of your channel, Murad?
You mean my future channel?
Presume so. It's hard to keep track. How many channels do you have?
Yes, I have YouTube channel. So this will be for the Islamic topics and for the biblical topics and maybe atheistic topics. So exactly like we do here on Sneakers, maybe exactly. Rumble channel will be the same thing, but it might have exclusives. And again, this is Islamic topics. I have a BitChute channel, and this is only for news and politics. And the videos on the BitChute channel will never be on any other channel because it's purely news and politics and conspiracies and all this stuff. So this stuff I can't put on YouTube.
Yeah, because YouTube doesn't like anything that challenges the what you call the orthodoxy, to use that word here. Consider
the standard narrative.
Standard narrative. Hello, Orthodox Empire. Thank you very much for that kind compliment there. And also to everyone else, it's been a lot of nice compliments there. I'm sure you probably appreciated the videos I've done with Jay recently defending the idea of the icons. I think I probably will share those videos on this channel, maybe later this week, just so that they're here as well. I didn't want to be kind of putting them up on the channel to give Jay a chance to get plenty of numbers, but I suppose one of the areas of interest was the question of the Asian art. You know, the depiction of Muhammad as Asian. And this is an ongoing sort of area of discussion, debate, and research in that. There were some that challenged my depiction of some of the figurines as being Arabic, and I have got additional evidence coming soon. My Chinese source, unfortunately, I can't name him. He's an academic, so he has to keep his identity hidden, which is fair enough.
He's a whistleblower.
He's a whistleblower, yeah. He has sent me another document, a dossier, and secret dossier, and that's going to be a real eye opener, because in it there are images of the Sogdians, and so we can rule out the Sogdians in terms of the 7th, 8th, 9th century figurines of the peoples that came from the Tayaye. So that'll be interesting, but judge for yourself. The other thing was, some people made a challenge on the idea that the camels were from Saudi Arabia, because you'd probably know better. A dromedary, is that a single hump or double hump? I can't remember which is which. The Bactrian is the double humped. We'll just use the word Bactrian. In the images, in the figurines with the camels, they were Bactrian. So people were saying, well, they couldn't be Arabs because they're on a Bactrian camel. So I've looked into that, and I've discovered that actually when people traveled on the Silk Route, they didn't start, say, in Iraq and bring their animal all the way. What they did was they went in stages. It was rare for someone to go all the way from A to Z to China. The only time you would go all the way would be if you're an envoy on behalf of your government, essentially. Otherwise, what you did was you sold your stuff to the next neighbor further east, and then they sold it further east. And what happened was you went back and forth over a small route. So if you imagine it in chunks, you had traders trading with the next trader on, and then they went back and they kept going back and forth like a yo-yo. And so all the stuff would have been offloaded, sold to the next trader, who exchanged other products for whatever products was going east, and so forth. Does that make sense? I don't know if that makes sense.
Yes.
So let's say if silk is going west, whatever was going east in exchange for that, which was, I would say, from in Iraq, wasn't very high quality. I would say a lot of leather goods, maybe some Syrian linen and stuff like that. That was a little bit higher quality than, say, anything down in the Hijaz. The Hijaz didn't really have much to trade, really. But do you want to jump in on that?
I'm saying even the person who says that the camels mean it came from the Hijaz, well, camels were all the way up also. So what's the problem? The camels are known from biblical times, and you see one of the very common attack against Abraham riding a camel is that there were no domestic camels back in the day. But if you watch a video for IP, Inspired Philosophy, he totally debunked that, and he goes into the camel who has 2 backs or 1, and it's a perfect video. So it's an indirect response to all of that.
Yeah. The other thing I would say is, and this is something people need to take into account, if you were an envoy and you were traveling all that way, the Arabian camels would not be suited to that trip, particularly for Central Asia, where you're going into mountains and it's really cold. What you want is a Bactrian camel, because they're suited to the extremes, the weather extremes, the cold and snow and you name it. They're a better animal. So they would have likely, even if they were intending to go all the way, they would have had to exchange their animals to get a better type of animal to go the whole journey. It's a bit like if you watch the latest James Bond movie. There's no spoilers here apart from the fact that there are Land Rovers featured quite heavily in the movie. But obviously, you wouldn't go doing the stunts that they were doing in a little Volkswagen van or something. You know, the Land Rover does the jobs. The Land Rover is the equivalent of the Bactrian camel. It's, you know, rugged and able to deal with all sort of conditions. So, just going to see if there's anyone else. Okay, let me just see. I just see the point here. It's like the traders played hot potato instead of point A to Z. Exactly, that's just perfectly said there. During the last 2 years, so much content challenging the Islamic narrative has been published. What is needed to make it common knowledge in the Islamic world? That's a good question. Any thoughts on that, Murad?
I was caught up with the chat. Just give me a second.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. It has to be on TV. You see, without media, you're lost. No matter how logical you are, no matter how much truth you have, it has to be on public TV. Let's say you get Jay Smith on just 10 minutes on CNN. It will shake the world. But let's say Jay Smith does all the good stuff on YouTube. It will always be fringe. So do all your effort to get the stuff to mainstream. That's all you need.
Yeah. Mainstream is associated with authority. And, you know, that's the problem you're up against. If you're on YouTube, it's not considered an authoritative source. That's the problem. What's that?
Authority is a good word. The guy in the CNN, you know that he is a liar. You know that he doesn't know what he's talking about. But he is in CNN and he is wearing a suit and a tie and he looks authoritative. So I wish that, like Robert Spencer before, that you come on the news channels, not just on YouTube. And you will surely make a huge difference just by appearing on such channels.
But here's the thing, though. This is why you'll never see Robert Spencer or Jay or any of us really on TV, is because all the Dawa team have to do is to paint us as Islamophobes, and you become instantly toxic, and the media will not touch you. They are like sheep. And
but being labeled an Islamophobe is much better than not being known. Robert used to come on Fox News a lot.
Yeah. Say that again, sorry?
Robert used to come on Fox News a lot.
Did it? Yeah.
These videos are, I have these videos, they're not on YouTube anymore.
Yeah.
So Robert used to do the right thing. He used to come on the news channels. That's why all his stuff is much known. It's very well known.
Yeah. So here's another one. I watched a documentary about a Persian prophet. His name is Mani. Mani spoke with trees, stones, and animals. Is Prophet Mani also source for Islam? Thank you for your answer. Well, I don't know if you're aware. If you look back about a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago, we did a whole series of videos on the Mani link. So yeah, we've pretty much covered that. I don't know if you want to.
I have the 2 videos. I don't know why they were lost from here.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, something happened.
I will upload them. Both of them.
Yeah, we had a weird thing. This 2 videos mysteriously disappeared, and it was Bala that said, "Why did you delete the videos?" And I said, "I haven't touched them." And I was driving the car, and I was like, "What's going on?" And then I rang Murad, and I was basically saying, "If you've done anything, you know, just let me know," kind of thing. And you were saying, "Why don't you trust me?" And I was like, "Oh, sorry, I just didn't." I had no idea what was going on, and I just thought, well, it must be one of us, you know. But I don't know. That's really weird. It's like as if people had hacked into it and stopped it, you know. Maybe I suppose it could be paranoid. But what would it take? It would just probably take someone working in YouTube, a member of the Dawa team working in YouTube, to basically go into the accounts and or whatever into the channel and just delete and you know, how would you prove otherwise, you know?
It is probable, but the good news is I have them, so I will be uploading them.
Definitely. I think we need those back up again. Where are the videos? Is that? I think that's probably to do with the same one. Yeah. Let me just see. Let me just try this question here. Would you describe Islam as being a composite belief system founded by the Umayyads? Do you want to have a shot at that one?
Mostly, yes. I am with the idea that the Umayyads are the ones who, you could say, created Islam. So, yes.
Yeah. Let me just see. Right. Maybe we could have a little bit of discussion. Let me just see if we can just remove that again. I don't know if you've seen Odin's recent work on Jay's channel by any chance. Have you had a chance, Murad?
The last video, no. I've seen some stuff.
Yeah. I think he makes a very strong case. I'm sure many in the audience probably have seen it. But he definitely shows the fact that there was a real strong messianic mood, let's say, in the camp in the 7th century, and this is reflected in the coins. And during the last couple of years, according to Odin, that's when Muawiyah, have I pronounced it correctly?
Muawiyah, yes, Muawiyah.
It was during the last 2 years, he seemed to switch from being a Christian to something edging towards what we would call Islam. Not quite fully, but just kind of stepping away from the purely Christian thing. And that was evidence in a coin that he produced that the Byzantines quickly rejected. It was kind of like a mockery of the Byzantine coins. And he was forced to retract the coin and pay his tribute with a proper coin. So he got slapped down. My feeling, I don't know where you stand on this, Murad, is that through the 7th century, the people who were in charge were surrounded by a population who were still a majority Christian population. And so even if they were harboring sort of Islamic-ish views, they couldn't just announce that completely in their coins. It was a slow evolution, a gradual bringing people along. Maybe that's the hunch I get. Any thoughts on that?
Well, according to Muawiyah, I think I have the same idea as Odin, because you definitely find that he was a Christian, no matter what sect. And then definitely he is not a Christian, because when he sent the letter to maybe Constance II, he was definitely mocking Christianity. But at the same time, he went and prayed to the place of Mary. So the guy definitely was a Christian, then converted, and maybe because he was shocked that the Messiah did not come back. And this is the idea that Bala also told us before. And I agree that the messianic thing was real. They used to calculate when will Jesus come back, and he never came back. That's why they say he is now a human and he is not God and all this stuff.
Yeah.
But I just disagree with Odin about other stuff. Like in the Quran, that the preachers are saying, do this, don't do this. This is a big mistake, and it's based on a misinterpretation by Asma Hilali in the Sana'a manuscript. So I will show you a response to that another time.
Yeah.
And he based the whole theory on her mistake. So
yeah, I don't know.
I don't agree with about.
Yeah, I don't know if that is coming from that source, or because I think he based it on what's his name, Gallet's work. So I don't know if Gallet's got influenced by that work that you mentioned.
I'm not sure, but in the end, I have a much simpler explanation, which makes more sense, I think.
I'm still. I have to say, I'd be more leaning towards Odin's one. I'd be interested to see what your take is, obviously, on it. But I find it a very compelling one. I don't know if you've read his book yet, The Great Secret. Have you?
No, not yet.
I think if you read his book, I think that might be a game changer for you. It might change your mind. But
Yes.
in any case, there's another question. Is there any evidence to suggest that the true Islam holds Muhammad as divine? Well, I don't know if you want to.
Divine, no. But sometimes they attribute almost divine attributes to him. But divine, no.
Yeah. What's his name that I had on? Lloyd de Young was on recently, and he has found evidence in what sources? I think it was the Sirah, and because he's got about 40 different Sirah down through the centuries, or is it more? It might be 50 something Sirah, and he's found definite evidence in that. I think that'll be an interesting presentation when he comes back. I hope to have him back in the next few weeks, or as soon as he's available, really. But he's found really solid evidence on that score, so that'll be interesting to see. I think there is something in the paintings. If you look at the way Muhammad has been transformed right up to the 15th century, it seems to be hinting that he's been treated as a divine figure, because in comparison to Jesus has a little halo around his head, and his companions have little halos and so on, but Muhammad has a full flame all around him, and there's all of this talk in some of the sources that Lloyd has read, that they viewed him as the light from which God has created all of the creation. So he's like not quite God, but like a demigod, or a demiurge. I think that's probably the better word for it.
In Shia, you have all of the stuff with Ali and Fatima. It's even more prevalent in Shia than Sunnah.
Yeah. Pardon me now, I'm just getting distracted with the chat. Let me just see. Let me just see if I've missed anything here. Okay, I see there's a discussion about the... Oh, here we are. I think this is it. Is it not possible that the early Muslims just used the convenient forms of coins in the same way they used the existing administrative infrastructure as in Damascus? Well, that's possible. There's also the point that the Byzantines were the dominant force at that time. And so if they demanded that coins need to be in a certain format for them to pay tribute to the Byzantines, well, that's the format that they minted them in. I think at the end of the day, a currency is only good if it's capable of being exchanged. If other nations, countries, empires are refusing your coinage or your currency, you've got to change it. So I think, at least for the first few decades, the Byzantines and the Persians had a lot of say in terms of what was acceptable for them. Do you want to say anything on that one?
Yes, I don't think that it is possible for a good reason. You see, if you want to know the answer, then you have to look at a pattern. So in these ancient world, we don't just say, well, maybe this, maybe that. You just look at the pattern for previous tribes that went in and invaded Persia, previous tribes and stuff. So like the White Huns and all this stuff. You will find that right away, when you take a new land, you mint new coins and you put new symbols. You don't just wait and keep using the old stuff. So the Umayyads would be no different. Now, why did they continue using? Because they were not an independent state the way you think. They were under the Byzantine hands for so long. Why would you wait all this time? Because you were not fully independent, or you were not fully Muslim to begin with.
Yeah.
So no, it's not possible.
Yeah, I think there was a continuous evolution of Islam right through the centuries, and I think, up to now we've been talking about the standard Islamic narrative, and that's the outside of the, if you like, the Russian doll of Islam. But I think when we take that apart, you'll probably find that there are hundreds of little mini narratives, each one replacing the previous one right through the centuries. I think that's my hunch. And that's something that Lloyd is going to argue for, and he's found evidence in the series, the various series down through the centuries of that evolution. What's your take on that idea that Islam's idea of how, you know, its founding story has been changed over time, and also the practices and beliefs? Would you go with that idea in general terms?
Yes, of course, no problem. But when you look at it as a historian, you will not waste time with the different series. Of course, this is not wasting time. This is a good question.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I would just look at the coins, and I would look at the rocks, and I would look at the non-Islamic sources to paint a good picture.
Yeah.
So what
Yeah.
you will find is that the first Muslim caliphate, if you like, it was not really Muslim. It
Yeah.
was a form of monotheism that probably rejected Christ as God or something. Then it became more Islamic.
Yeah, I would say that the evidence of a change in narrative down through the centuries is a corollary to the main point. If you show that at the beginning there was no Islam, there was something else, there was the primitive version of it, a pre-Islam stage. Once you've made that argument, then the rest gets chipped out automatically. It falls asunder. Here's an interesting question. Before I take this question, just want to say hello to Banu Pong from Thailand. It's absolutely my pleasure to see you. He's let me just show his post again for a second. Greeting Mel, Murad, and everyone in the chat. I'm humble Buddhist from Thailand who's very passionate with Christian and Islamic history. So great to see you or hear from you, and glad that you're here. So thank you very much, and I'm sure there's probably loads that you can potentially share with us in terms of your experience with Islam. I don't know much about the presence of Islam in Thailand. Maybe there's things in the history that you could share with us. That would be cool. But back to this other question. KC says, when did the Shia-Sunni split begin? I don't think we've really scratched the surface of that one. I think there's a lot of assumptions around this whole question, but I don't think I'm happy with the consensus on this one. What's your thoughts, Murad?
Well, you don't see the word Shia or Sunnah in the early non-Islamic sources. This is number one.
Yeah.
Second thing is, today we see Shia and Sunnah as if they are two entities equal in size. But this is not true. What we see in the non-Islamic sources is that Shia was a sect that was maybe more Gnostic, and it came out from Iraq, and it probably started at the time of Muawiyah. So nothing before the Umayyad Caliphate. We do not see anything before. And then later it kept growing, and it turned into this what you call now Sunnah and Shia split.
Okay, so if we term it in terms of which came first, the chicken or the egg, we're talking Shia was first.
No. Shia would be around the time of Muawiyah, when he defeated Ali near Iraq. Okay. And this would be the very first thing that you find from the sources.
But so you think the Sunni was from before that period? So the beliefs and traditions of the Sunni come before Muawiyah's?
Sunnah and Shia as traditions, I think they are both too late. This is a fight that happened too late. But the original people, the very first people, were the people that later was called Sunni.
Yeah. So my sense of it is that, just looking at the artwork, the Shia seems to have sort of history on their side. They like the artwork of Muhammad goes right way back. The Sunni idea that you shouldn't paint Muhammad is a very late idea. It's the 1500s onwards. So personally, just judging it from the artwork, to me, it looks like Shia came first. Now, whether there was a root of the Sunni before the Shia thing about Ali and so on. Whether this whole Ali thing is even to be accepted, I'm not sure. But yeah, I don't know. I think jury's out for me on that one.
If you are talking traditions, I think the traditions of Shia is a little bit earlier, but everything is too late. Either
Yeah.
Shia or Sunnah.
Yeah. I think we'd agree on that score. But I think Sunni Muslims like to view their tradition as being more ancient than the Shia, and so therefore the Orthodox view. But I'd agree they're both late, but I would say, relatively speaking, the Shia are earlier. And so if there is one, like if a tradition is later than another tradition, I would say it's automatically going away from the original tradition. So therefore, heterodox, if we take the earliest tradition as being closest to the founder or founders, then, if that's a fair way of reading the history, and that's a big if, I suppose, that's how I would see it.
Yes.
Let me see if we're missing any other questions.
Someone here says Murad is wrong on Jesus. Even Jesus was a mythical figure. Please read Richard Carrier's book. Actually, I've read for Richard Carrier before, and I think the guy is lost, and he's very narcissistic, and he wants to be famous. So everything that he has in his book is not even well documented. If you want to read a Jesus myth, then I suggest other people than Richard. So no, and in the future I will make a massive documentary about Jesus Christ historicity, only by sources that are not Christian.
Yeah, and just in case anyone doubts it, you're not a Christian.
No, I'm not a Christian. I consider myself a classical theist. So I believe in the stories, some stories of the Old Testament as history. It's not that I am a Jew or a Christian. I just believe it's history, and I can prove it only by secular history.
Yeah. Question from Bob Fisher. How many sects of Islam is there, and why do they believe in different aspects of being a Muslim? I don't know if I'd know the answer off the top of my head there, but there's a lot, I think.
A lot of sects, I don't know the number. Why do they believe? Well, you see, as time goes on, these sects will always multiply. That's in any religion. So this is not as important as you think.
Yeah. You know, the joke about the meeting, group of people, the first item on the agenda is the split. That is human nature, the splitting up into different camps. Doesn't matter how homogenous a group is, they'll always find something to split over, So it's going to continue. I think Islam will continue to splinter as time goes by.
There's a hadith that supposedly Muhammad said that my people will split into 72 groups, and only one will be the survival. Well, I can tell you that the people will split in even much more than 72 as time keeps going on.
Yeah.
72, of course, is just a mythical number because back in the day there was 72 tongues, so as if from every nation. So,
well, they have the standard solution in Islam to deal with that kind of thing is genocide. They will eventually get around to wiping out any of the groups that, just to keep the number below 72. That's
a good idea.
By the way, this is just a joke. In case anyone.
Yes, it's just a joke.
I'm not encouraging it. Here's a question. If I may ask one question for Murad, I want to know his opinion about the accuracy of Shiite Islamic history, such as the existence of 12 imams, also about those supposedly shrines of imam. Is it real? So any thoughts on that?
I think they are real, but starting from the very first one was a fraud. So they are real, but they are wrong. They are not the children of Ali and Muhammad and stuff. So they were real, but they themselves were a fraud. So the shrines are real. Yes, they are.
Yeah.
Like today in many Arab countries, you have kings saying that they are from the seed of Muhammad, but you don't know. if you keep tracing, you will might end up with someone from an Ottoman Empire that was a fraud. You see?
Do you know what I find interesting? Just as you're talking there, it occurred to me. So if we say that Shiaism really traces its way back to the time of Ali, if we looked at the coins, we see this kind of idea of the caliph or the emir, the mu'minin, taking on attributes almost of a divine nature, a mediator between God and humanity. And that, I think, makes sense then of the idea in Shiaism of the imams as a kind of like a representative that reveals truths from God to the people. I think if Shiaism started in the latter half of the 7th century, let's say, that's a big if, but probably a bit later, we could see that as stemming from that messianic period in the 7th century, potentially, as an offshoot, maybe.
I don't see it this way. I see that Shia probably emerged with the Abbasids. This is what we find in history, really.
Yeah, much later. It's hard to I suppose when the Alids were murdered by, I think would it be the predecessor of Mansur? I can't remember his name. Is it Abbas? He lived for a very short.
Yeah. The first one.
Yeah, he basically. I think I mentioned this in a video I did a few days ago from I can't remember the book. The book about Jerusalem. I think it's called Jerusalem, a biography or something like that. But anyway, it talks about the Alids being murdered by the Abbasids. So I can't see how that would that be the. Are you suggesting that is the trigger point for the beginning of Shiaism? So it's kind of in response, a knee-jerk reaction to the killing of the Alids, that they took on a different direction.
But I think that the Shia are the ones who really helped the Abbasids come to power. Then the Abbasids turned on them. I'm not 100% sure or can build a case, but this is what I think at the minute.
Yeah. Question here from Father Brian. Saint Murad, on what channel of yours can we anticipate your work on Exodus and Red Sea crossing?
Well, thank you, Reverend Brian. I always see your comments and I have a lot of respect for you. It will be on YouTube and on Rumble. So YouTube and Rumble will have the Islamic content, the biblical content, and stuff about atheism. But the BitChute channel is for news and politics. And I will make a mirror on Minds and Odyssey, so they will also have updated YouTube videos. So you have 4 places that you can watch such videos.
Yeah. And are you waiting till you get all the evidence before you release the Exodus, or do you think you might do it in stages and say do a block for the bit that you've got?
I will gather all the evidence first, then I will make it in chunks, because if I make it in one video, it will be like 6 hours or something. It will be horrible. So I will make it in chunks.
Yeah.
But I have to gather all the evidence. So from A to Z, I have to know first. I will not make a chunk, then try my luck. You see?
Yeah. It's a bit like there is a gospel passage about Jesus saying that you shouldn't go to war before you know what size your army is and the opponent's army. So it's a bit like that.
Exactly. I am now. What's missing is that there are texts that have never been translated. So from ancient Egyptian text.
Yeah.
So I have to find someone to translate, and not just one, but minimum 2 people. I want them to not know exactly what I am trying to look for and to translate it in the most honest way, because you see, I didn't find these people yet. That's the idea.
Yeah. Question here from Jonas Parket. I'm trying to guess where that would be. Would that be Denmark, Sweden, Norway? One of those. How do Muslim moderates explain how many of the main problematic ideas in Islam are the same in Shia and Sunni if the split between them happened early in Islamic history? Surely those problems would have been there from the beginning. I'm sure. What's your take on that? Not sure if I follow it.
I'm not sure if I totally understand the question, but if he's saying how do moderates like dismiss the Shia and Sunni problems, how do they get around that? They will say they are humans and they are not divine and they are prone to mistakes and no problem. Everything is perfect. Now let's continue practicing Islam.
Yeah.
This is what they say.
Yeah. Hjørns Parket, which I'm probably murdering the pronunciation, is from Denmark. So it's great to see someone from Denmark here. I'm always amazed where everyone is from. They're from all over. Incredible. I don't know if I have anything to add to that. It's a bit of a long question. How do Muslim moderates explain how many the same in Shia and Shia? Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, I don't know. I think these problems were there probably from the beginning. Maybe that's their explanation. Not sure.
It is easy. The Sunni, they don't see a problem. They think the Sunni is right. Shia don't see a problem. They think the Shia is right. So they don't see a split to begin with. They see one is heretic and one is right.
Yeah, they're both inside their own little bubble.
Exactly.
And outside it's the in group and the out group. So they're in the in group, and everyone else is a heretic, basically.
Yes.
That's it all solves. There's another question. Do all Abrahamic religions have origins in the Nile Valley? And are you familiar with the work of biblical anthropologist Alice C. Lindsley? Sorry.
No, I don't know Alice Lindsley. Yeah. Do all Abraham? No. If you consider Islam, then no.
I don't think it's true that they all have origins in the Nile Valley. Yes, maybe they have traces. Maybe I don't think. I would say like Iraq probably had a big influence for Judaism. It's like a lot of, like, for example, it was while they were in Babylon that a big chunk of the Bible was edited and all of their early traditions were brought together. So I think I would put that as quite an important one. And for Christianity, I would say it's primarily Israel. That's where it got started.
I disagree a little bit with Judaism and Iraq. This is the modern secular rendering of the data.
Yeah.
So what I found is that it's not really true. So the old biblical traditions are much more accurate, and it goes well with history than the revisionist say of today.
Right. Yeah. I don't doubt that there was a history before the bringing together of the different books and so on, but I think there was a kind of what you call a relook at what all of their traditions meant in the light of being kept in captivity in Babylon. I think they viewed all of their writings afresh.
That's probable. Yes, that's probable.
Yeah. Now, how much of a change that brought about on the text is hard to say. But they probably would have seen fresh themes. But as I say, that's outside of my area of expertise. I'm sure a biblical scholar would probably. Right, there's a question here. I'm sorry if I'm missing anyone. Hello, Saint Murad. What is your opinion about Imam Tawhidi, if I'm pronouncing correctly? Is that the Australian guy, is it?
Who is him? I don't know him.
Not.
I've heard this name, but I don't know him. I don't really go after imams and sheikhs. I don't really care, so I don't know exactly who is he.
Yeah. Does our Danish friend just had a follow up comment? If the split was early, wouldn't these moral problems come from Quran instead of at Hadith? Not necessarily. I suppose there is a third possibility is that there's the oral tradition as well, that the practice of the people on the ground before it was ever written down. So that's another possibility as well in terms of how it happened. I don't know if you want to comment on that.
Yes, I agree with you, because the Quran was originally not Arabic and they didn't really understand it. And I think they didn't really care. They cared much about the Hadith and who has the right to rule. And the split came from here, not from the Quran.
Yeah. Just words to people not to use bad language in the comments there. Just we don't want to be too strong on the moderation, but at the same time, let's keep it civil. Thank you for the kind donation there, our friend from Denmark. Thank you so much. It's very kind of you. Simple answer for Muslims, Allah knows best. Yes, that's always the get out of jail card.
There is a question here about Alif Lam Mim.
Let me see. Where do you see that? Is that further down?
Milind Kulkarni.
Okay, let me see. This one? What is the meaning of Alif Lam Mim in Aramaic or Arabic language? What is the significance? I think that's something you've been looking into.
Yes. You see, in Arabic, it has no meaning. It's as if you say ALM. It has no meaning at all.
Yeah.
But if you read it in Aramaic, then it will be Alim. And this is a word which means be silent. This is an Aramaic word, and it's in the biblical Hebrew Bible. This is what Professor Gabriel Salma says. So it's very easy to understand, because in churches, in the Syriac churches, when the priest finishes the mass, when he begins, he says, be silent. Then they start reading the, what do you call this when you read in church?
The lectionary?
They start reading the lectionary, or the Quran if you like. This is the same word.
Yeah.
So be silent, then start reading aloud. So it makes sense only this way. In Arabic, it has no meaning, of course. That's why all the commentaries, they keep saying all kind of lunatic stuff, because they don't know the meaning.
Yeah. See here, there's a comment. I love concept of Christianity very much, that God died for our sins, but the thing that took away from Christianity was historical Jesus. I wonder what you mean by that. Are you saying that it'd be a great thing?
He says he likes it, but the problem is it's not historical. No, it's more historical than you think, and I'm not a Christian telling you that. So in future videos you will see that. Yeah.
I think at some stage in the future we must get around to doing a video about the Turin Shroud. It comes up every so often, and
I'll be doing a monumental work on it, because I'm watching everyone about it, skeptics and people who believe in it. So
is this something you're working on at the moment?
No, not at the moment, but I keep gathering, I keep listening.
Yeah.
I've listened to hours about Shroud because I'm fascinated by it.
Yeah. I think that would be a great one, because I get really annoyed with rationalists, inverted commas, who only pick and choose between what they accept rationally. Like, for example, if a test was done and it agrees with their opinion, but it turns out to be invalid for some reason, they still say, no, the test had this result, even though it was overturned at a later stage. So in the case of the Turin Shroud, they discovered that they had cut a piece of material from a newer part of the cloth, didn't take into account the fact that there was a fire, and part of the shroud was was supported by another new cloth, and so that contaminated the results and made the dating much younger. Now, you either accept science or you don't. If you don't take that into account when you know with a carbon dating, I think that's dishonest. I think you have to take those details into account. But I think that'll be a great one to look into at a later stage.
You see, people will not expect that today. I think, and this is just me, I know what I'm saying doesn't really, you don't necessarily think it is, but I think that modern science has a lot of sorcery, and carbon-14 is just a sorcery. This is not even science. But this I will take a whole new video to explain. Then we can look into the shroud and look deeply into all of this, because it's highly critical.
Yeah. Well, I think the one thing I would acknowledge is carbon dating is a very inexact science. There's lots of problems with it. It's not like, say, atomic half-lives that you can precisely, date the age of a planet or a rock or whatever. It's a little, well, it's not as precise as that, because an awful lot of factors come into effect that can affect the aging of something. And if we're talking about decades or even centuries, that could make a huge difference in terms of the overall dating. But just off, while not getting into the topic fully, a couple of things I found that were, well, maybe even three things that I found particularly interesting, is in one study, what they found was the stitching was identical to examples of first century stitching. So that's, if it was a forgery, that's a hell of a forgery to have got that bit right. And the other thing that I've seen is they took pollen samples from the cloth, and they found something like 30-something species of flowers. And when they put that into the database, it clustered around Jerusalem, which again would suggest that it's not something that's a fake, that it's a genuine article. And the third one is that they found that the image could be used to create a 3D model of Jesus, or the person who was that the shroud was wrapped around. And what they found was that this was consistent with radiation coming off the body onto the cloth, rather than simply, as a lot of people think, that it was just a case of wrapping a cloth around someone, getting the paint marks from the person, and then, hey presto, we've got a shroud. But actually, that isn't the case, because they've tried to make a fake shroud and have that effect, but it didn't work. They reckon, scientists are working on it, reckon that it was produced by a massive radiation from the original body, which would be consistent with the idea of resurrection. So there's three things that kind of, I think, are pretty solid arguments.
Well, you see, I like to ask always the easiest question. Let's say it's a forgery. Make something exactly like it.
Yeah.
You have all the time, you have all the technology. Let's watch. And when I see that every time it doesn't look near the same.
Yeah.
So that's the idea. I don't like to keep jumping around. It's a forgery. Make another one. Let's watch.
Yeah. Plus, we have to accept that if it's a forgery that was done 800 or 900 years ago with less technology, without microscopes. So you can't just micromanage the image. You basically, you do what you can.
If you want to talk about this topic, then you have to mix it in with the Sudarium of Oviedo, because if they both complement each other, then you really have a problem. Then there is something in these two relics.
Yeah. For those who are not aware, for those who are not aware, and I've forgotten the name, but I recognize what you mean. There's a separate piece of cloth that was placed on Jesus. We're going to assume it's Jesus's face, and that matches up with the shroud as well. And they are two distinct objects. Am I right?
Yeah. So you have to have a research it has no holes in it at all, and then you put the science in and you check everything, then you see. I'm not saying that this means that the resurrection happened, but I'm saying that this is definitely something that you cannot replicate, and it's definitely very strange, and I'm still looking into it. You
Yeah,
see?
yeah,
I
yeah.
think this is the logic conclusion.
Yeah, I think I think the rational way to go before you assume anything is miraculous, which obviously a resurrection would be miraculous. You exhaust all the natural explanations and you go through them, and you're really thorough, and then it's only then at the end you've gone through every other possible explanation, then you can rationally conclude that this is beyond the natural, supernatural, in other words.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Just before you go on, I would like to thank a new Patreon that just came here called Zach. Thank you very much, sir.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Just I don't know if there's any comment here that you want to jump in on. Let's. Are there really three Murads, and are they triplets? Let me see. There was another one comment here. Let me just say. But if the sin is a political literary device 200 years later, what then accounts for the divergence? Yeah. Well, here's the thing. I suppose we're looking at it as I think that we had this discussion before we went online. You know, we've been talking about the standard Islamic narrative, but actually, and forgive me if I did talk about this live. I can't remember, but there was probably a whole series of different narratives down through the centuries, and probably during Ottoman times, they tidied up all the loose ends and homogenized it, and they said, right, this is it. Now, this is the final story. And around that time, the hadiths were tidied up. Whatever existed before, they were added to. But the process never stopped. It just kept going on. That's my take on it.
Well, there's an important question. We always say holes in the narrative, but no one says why there are holes. But the answer is simple. Because you do not have the Umayyad literature. It is burned, or maybe it wasn't even written because there were no paper like the Abbasids had. It's a game changer, the paper. It's like you have a computer or you do not.
Yeah.
So this is the whole, is the Umayyad literature.
Yeah. Well, I think they could have potentially had things written on parchment, but parchment is really expensive to write on. So the amount of parchment that could have been written on would have been minuscule. And if they were switching to creating Qurans, probably any bits of parchment was probably reused for that purpose. So plenty of wiping parchments and turning it into a Quran went on for centuries. So that would pretty much account for a lot of the losses. I just want to acknowledge that. Thank you very much. Is that a super chat? I think it might be. Thank you. Okay, let me just see if we're missing anything. Okay. Okay, so I think skeptic is not convinced of a historical Jesus. I kind of think there's a kind of a double standard in relation to history that goes on. I think when history is done with an agenda, I think that's a dangerous sort of way to go down. Like, we wouldn't dispute the historicity of Alexander the Great, Nero, and all of these other people. Even though with some of these, I think Alexander the Great, I think his biography is from centuries later. But suddenly, when it comes to someone like Jesus, a different set of standards apply, and I think we have to be consistent if we accept certain historical standards for some historical figures, we need to apply the same for other historical figures. And the other thing I suppose we need to kind of distinguish is the human story of Jesus versus the supernatural. You can never prove the supernatural from history, obviously. So I think you kind of have to distinguish and not let the question of faith blur your sense of what the history was. You know, that's my take. Considering you have a huge movement that was caused by something, you've got 70 historical writings referring to Jesus in the first, I think it was in the first century or so from his time. I think that's ample historical evidence in my view. But I don't know.
I just tell him, wait and see my new stuff in the future, but listen to it carefully, to every word, and look up everything I say, then re-evaluate.
Yeah. And KL says, consensus of historians agree Jesus walked the earth, including atheist historians. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I know, I think the thing is, it's good to be skeptical and you have to evaluate, but at the same time, you have to be realistic when it comes to history. You don't get to choose what the evidence is. You simply have to accept what is the received evidence as it stands. And this can be a frustrating thing. But I think there's plenty of sufficient evidence, especially the fact that you have people from the time talking about at least knowing someone who knew the person involved. Like, let's say, for example, you have John the Apostle, who had various disciples of his own at a later stage. I think one of them might have been Polycarp, who in turn had a disciple called Irenaeus. And that's basically just 3 short steps. And each of them have got copious amounts of writings to do with Jesus. So if you're going to say Jesus is just a myth, then you've got a lot of problems, because you're going to have to come up with a realistic explanation for why a whole spectrum of people claimed at that time that they were mentored by someone who knew this historical person. So there's a danger that in trying to be historical in a skeptical sense, you actually end up becoming mythological, because you're accepting a sort of conspiracy theory in essence.
Yeah, I was going to say the exact same words. There is a video called, I think, the Flavian conspiracy or something. And the guy, he talked about how Josephus actually created what the Gospels later took from him. And the amount of, mind gymnastics that he did. This is a huge conspiracy. This is not very easy. And why would Rome want to invent a Messiah that's a sissy? Rome, if it wants to do something, it will totally crush you. It doesn't need all this sissy stuff.
Yeah.
It means you do not know Rome. I am fascinated by Rome and by the Caesars and all this stuff. If they want to do something, they will just crush you. No need to make a Messiah that's soft.
Yeah. Let me see. Skeptic says, sorry, Mel, yes, it is true the biography of Alexander was written after centuries. I'm not sure what that is. Abbey Arian. But Arian was using first-hand sources in case of Jesus' Gospel, not written by any eyewitnesses. Where's your evidence for that? That's. I think most scholars would say that the writings consist of eyewitness accounts, even whole chunks of elements in the Gospel seem to be directly taken from eyewitnesses. Like, it's easy to say, I just don't believe it, but then you're no longer a historian once you take. If you go with the ultra skeptical line, you stop being a historian. Historians have a moderate level of skepticism, a realistic level of skepticism. If you say I'm going to be 100%, like, if you imagine it's like what do you call that, scale, you're going to go ultra skeptical. Then you could literally throw out 99% of all history, but that isn't realistic. You kind of have to take a more moderate level of skepticism, because if you don't, you're in the area of mythological explanations then, because you have to replace it with something. You have to account for huge numbers of events that have happened, but without a historical figure as the cause of it, like, to take a really simple example, I drive my car to work, okay? The simple explanation for how my car brought me to work is the engine that's in it and the fuel and so on and all the mechanics of it. But if I went and said, well, my engine doesn't exist, okay, I now have to account for how my car moves from A to B, and then I could have to come up with a preposterous alternative explanation for what caused my car to move from my home to my place of work. It's kind of like that. Like, philosophically, you've got an effect, you have to explain the cause. If you're going to say there was no historical cause, then you in terms of a figure, an actual charismatic figure who has got a completely unique teaching that is unheard of prior to him, you've got to come up with an explanation, and I don't think you can do that if you throw it out. What do you want to say there, Murad?
People who try to establish the historicity of Jesus all the time did a terrible job. This is the conclusion that I have. There is a guy, he is a historian, and he wrote a book called Jesus Was the King of Edessa. He is a lunatic, but he has a lot of good stuff in it. This stuff, when you use and you mix it with Paul's letter and where he were and the supposed mistake of John in the beginning, and you mix this with the Shroud of Turin and the letter that Jesus gave to the king, I don't remember his name, the Arab
I
king.
don't either, yeah, can't remember either.
When you mix in all of that, you will know exactly who was Jesus of history. So there are a lot of stuff that the people who try to establish the historicity of Jesus fell for the modern hoax, for the scam. Yes, King Abgar, for the modern scam, and they threw out a very important stuff.
Yeah.
So I will restore this in future video, but it will be a huge video, so don't expect it anytime soon.
Yeah. I think Skeptic says, I know that guy, he's Ralph Ellis.
Ralph Ellis, yeah.
Yeah, I think he actually sent me a pile of emails, and I realized he's a bit of a loon. So dropped that one. Well, at least Skeptic, at least would agree on that score.
Yeah, his conclusions are wrong, but he got some stuff that when you put it in the correct context is very important.
Yeah. I would say Skeptic, don't take it the wrong way, but I think if you moderate your skepticism and then look at the evidence afresh without any agenda, then see where you get to, and just actually look, okay, I don't believe it. What is the evidence, and go from there and just piece it up and just see what hypothesis would get suggested if you go for as much evidence as you can find. I think it'd be very hard to completely dismiss the idea of a historical figure, because that's usually the simplest explanation. If there is a big movement started all of a sudden out of nowhere, the idea that there was like the idea that it was almost like a novel was written and then suddenly a movement got created on the back of a novel is an idea that seems appealing in the post 1500 ages, now that we have printers and easy access to books and so on. But you're talking about a time where everything, or where the majority of people weren't accessing books, but they were joining this movement simply because there were people standing up on platforms preaching to them, and they were hearing it orally. and spreading it orally. That's how it happened. So you kind of have to account for why these people were going out preaching, number one, and the fact that so many of them were willing to die and were killed for this. If this was completely a fiction, well, they have to be the dumbest people in history. I don't think people are that dumb that they would risk their lives and actually go to their deaths still proclaiming that what they were saying is true. I think that's very unlikely, unless they're all just completely stone mad. But I don't think that's the report that was being given about them.
I can tell you something that's easier.
Yeah.
I could make a video about the historicity of Jesus, and the other person will make a video about how the Jesus myth got into being, and take both of our videos to a neutral audience, 100 or 1,000, and they write in the end who do they think makes more sense. The audience will be the judge, and we keep out of it. This is what I say.
Well, according to the data, modern scholars, we know only Paul and Peter died for the faith. That is just bunkum. Yeah, I don't know who according to what data, according to what modern scholars, that is bunkum. Traditions are kept about these people. You have to imagine that people cherish the lives of these people. They kept relics, belongings, a lot of them. Their stories were often contained. We have someone like Eusebius, who's probably one of the earliest church historians, and he writes in great detail what happened to the apostles. And he mentions that he had access to various documents that he had worked from. And I think it was Eusebius that even said that if anyone doubts that Jesus existed, in fact, I might look this up and post it afterwards, that they could, at that stage, they could still look up the records of his birth and so on. I think it was Eusebius. I may be wrong. Maybe it was a later writer, an earlier writer that said that. I remember seeing it somewhere. But there were census records at one stage. Unfortunately, they've got destroyed over the centuries. But there was much better evidence in the early centuries that these early writers could turn to. So one of the evidences was the fact that there was a census and people could look at the official census in relation to the birth of Jesus. It's a pity I can't remember offhand where I've seen that, but it was definitely one of the early historians. Did you want to say something? Sorry.
It's very important that we know the history of early Islam from non-Islamic sources, because these illuminate new stuff for us. When Islam invaded Armenia, they captured a lot of Christians, and these Christians, they could either pay the jizya or something, or they get killed. And people, they wanted to convert to Islam, just by the sword. A lot of these people, they chose to die for Christ and not abandon the faith. This tells you that throughout history, this was a Christian pattern that we see. So it happened at the beginning, and it kept on happening.
It's interesting. Eusebius, probably one of the best known historians in Christianity. He was a forger. That's a skeptic believes. You're sounding more and more like a conspiracy theorist to me. I can't take you seriously.
He says that Josephus is a forger.
Eusebius. He's now added Eusebius. So
yes, and in the end, he was talking about the part of Josephus.
Yeah.
Well, let me tell you, Josephus, we don't only take the part about Christ about him. Look at him as a historian when he writes about everything before Christianity, and you will find that the guy is very knowledgeable, very high quality historian. So why do you disregard the part about Christ? Well, there is also a Syriac Josephus, which has another version with the same parts, but a little bit different. I personally take the Syriac source more than the known one. It makes more sense when he says that he is not the Messiah, but people think he is the Messiah. I think this makes more sense.
Yeah.
But in the end, you have the whole skeleton of the same thing. You see?
Yeah. Just a message to Ricardo. I'm sorry I missed your question. I'm obviously trying my best to scan. So if you just repost the question, I'll keep an eye out for it. Okay. Let me see. Skeptics love languages arguing. Please don't fall for this distraction. Yeah, I think it's just arguing for the sake of it. Thing is, it's fine being skeptical, but you also need to be rational. And if you are just literally throwing everything out and saying that everyone that disagrees with you is a forger, didn't exist, that to me is not honest. You know, if I could easily just turn around and say that every piece of evidence that you have is on the basis of forgery as well, but where's the evidence that someone is a forger? You know, that's.
Well, I will ask him one question. The Inquisition. Do you have first-hand eyewitness accounts that the Inquisition happened? Please provide these sources down.
Yeah.
This is much later, and I want first-hand stuff, not stuff that Martin Luther allured to later. Please put it down in the comments. Ricardo here, he posted this question.
Just Murad, the Syriac and Arabic part comes from Eusebius. Alice Wheely, PhD, proves it in her book. Proves it. Alice is to be trusted, but Eusebius isn't, apparently. Okay. Ricardo, many Catholics claim Jesus clearly established the basis of the papacy itself. Is this true? That's a good question. Clearly established. I think the papacy gradually evolved. I think, like in the first few centuries, I think it's fair to say that there were 5 main Christian centers, each with their own patriarch. So I think Jerusalem was one, Antioch, where else? Rome. I can't remember what the other ones are off the top of my head. But I think there was always a kind of a feeling that the Pope was the first among the equals. But like a lot of things, the understanding got unpacked over time. So I don't know. I think it depends on the interpretation, because I know some of our audience are Protestant here, and they will disagree on the interpretation. But certainly, if you look at the Bible, just on a straightforward fashion, Jesus appears to be giving Peter the keys of the church and calls him the rock, the foundation on which the church is built. Protestants would say, no, the rock he's referring to is the faith. That doesn't seem to be the most obvious interpretation. But in any case, that's the early Christian church seemed to have taken the first interpretation. And later, Protestants took a different interpretation on those original biblical texts. But that's all I can say, really. I'm not a biblical scholar by any stretch of imagination. I'm kind of pushing outside my territory. Myth Vision podcast has many academics and Christian history. Yeah, I think Myth Vision, if I'm not mistaken, is sort of they are the equivalent of what we are doing, except it's against Christianity. I think that's it. Am I right? I think that's their take on things. Let me see. If you study the Philok debate, you will see the concept of the Pope being supreme become more apparent as the Eastern Empire became almost non-existent under Islam. Yeah, I suppose it's a case of when those centers of power ceased to exist. So you imagine, there was 5 patriarchs, and suddenly Islam took over the areas where 4 of them existed. And so once they're out of the picture, all that was left really of any significance was the Pope. And so that would explain how the papacy became more central. Certainly, the Eastern Church never accepted the supremacy of the Bishop of Rome. I wonder, is that entirely true? I suppose I'd have to look into it, Veronica. I'll accept your point. It definitely was true for later in history. I'm not sure in the earlier history, because I think if we look at the Seventh Ecumenical Council, there's the official one and the unofficial one. The unofficial one, which was about the iconoclasm, that didn't have a representative of the Pope, and that was later thrown out. It didn't. I think it also didn't have representatives from the other patriarchs, so it's probably a bad example, come to think of it. But it was only when the patriarchs and the Pope was involved in the new Seventh Ecumenical Council that was accepted. But again, that's as I think through it, it doesn't make any strong argument for the Pope there either. Let me see. The 5 C's are Rome, Constantinople, Alexandria, Antioch, and Jerusalem. Thank you very much. That's it, exactly. We have a departing message. Take care, Mel and Murad. Let's resume our discussion next day. Love your work. I don't agree on you, Jesus, but on Muhammad, I am. Fair enough.
That's great. That's great.
That's great, yeah. As I say, this is just a friendly discussion, even though we probably might be passionate about our point of view, but that's grand. Any other questions? Am I missing anything? If you see a question there that I've missed, let's go back. Let's just scroll. Sorry, if you want to talk on anything there while I have a look and just see if I missed anything.
Yes, I want to tell people I have a channel on BitChute, and this is only for news and politics. So if you are interested, you can subscribe there. I have over 1,000 there, which is quite a number on BitChute. It's Saint Murad, and also I am on Minds. You can follow me there because the new YouTube videos will be mirrored there. So you can check these out, and now you can post your questions because we will be wrapping up after a while.
Yeah. Okay. Let me just see a comment here about names like Ali, Muhammad, and Muawiyah. Do you agree that they were not used in among Arabs before Islam? Are there more names like that? I think Muawiyah was historical, so I don't think there's any question about that. And Ali, there are 2 sources in the 7th century, so on that score, I don't see a problem.
Well, I like his question because no, we do not find these names before these people.
Oh, I see. Yes. Yeah, I see. Yeah, misinterpreted.
It's very
yeah. The only thing I would say is Muawiyah is very similar to Mavia, which was an ancient Arab princess from a queen. So this could be like a male version of it. So it's like a redoing of that name, maybe.
Yeah, I think I told you that before, and it might be correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, it was you actually. Sorry. Yeah, that's about 2 years ago, I think.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. I forgot where I got that from. Any other points? Do you know something I'll probably just bring up briefly? Let me just see if I can put this away. I suppose one of the things, we keep hearing about Islam being the fastest growing religion in the world and so on. But what's interesting, I was looking at the fertility rates in the Middle East, and it's interesting. It's about 3. I think it might be even 2.9 or something like that. But it was obviously much higher a few decades ago, and it's currently at the same rate that America was back in the 60s. And there's a trend that I think it might be something worth doing in a future video. The trend that happened in America from a high birth rate at the beginning of the century to a sub replacement rate that it currently exists, just to take America as an example, the same trend seems to be heading its way towards the Middle East, falling birth rate, despite the fact that people think maybe they see Muslims as having a much larger families relative to the West, but it's only relative to the West, and I think things will balance out in terms of the relative size of the Islamic population or the Muslim population versus other parts of the world, and then that's not even taking into account the amount of apostasy. Like I think in America, something like I think it was around 25% apostasy in America, maybe 10% in the Middle East. So my view, looking ahead in the decades ahead, I think Islam is going to level out as in terms of its size. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I disagree with you because in the Middle East you are right, but in the West they take the welfare, and the Western countries are very much open their arms for them. And
so it's baby factory time.
yes, and it has to do with the number of births. But the
Yeah.
West is in deep sleep, and they are
Yeah.
having abortion, and they are going with the new modern myth. I call it myth.
Yeah.
That you do not believe in your people, you do not believe in your boundaries, your
Yeah.
all that stuff, and you invite all this into your country. So in the
Yeah.
end, you will lose the nation. So this is a big problem, I see.
Yeah. I think there should be a film made of a time machine where a crusader is sent forward in time to our age, and he sees how the West is behaving, and he starts losing his mind. He said, "What?
He
Why
will
aren't
commit
you?"
suicide.
he wouldn't. He wouldn't be able to stick it. He'd just go crazy. He'd say, "Are you? Is there any men left in this
Especially
godforsaken?"
if he sees the. Of course, I have nothing against the LGBT, but if he sees this now, he will definitely commit suicide.
Yeah. Better not say any more on that score because we'll definitely be shut down. But there's definitely we're dealing with YouTube's Sharia law here.
But the problem with the leftist ideology is that you do not respect your country in the end. I want you to be left, but respect your country. It never works.
Yeah.
Because this ideology invites that you become global and get everyone in, and you do not love your people. This is the nature of this ideology.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing about it, and I suppose it's encouraging in a way, is if you look at the birth rates among leftists and atheists in particular, atheist leftists in particular, they've got the lowest birth rates going. So it's an unsustainable ideology. They eventually die out. So what happens is another group of people will take over in their place. But unfortunately, it could be a completely extreme view that is totally the other end of the spectrum. Mind you, I think the leftists might be very similar because they're both fundamentalists in different ways.
And the left, it welcomes Islam and it hates Christianity in general.
Yeah.
So you are hitting the wrong person, and you are inviting the wrong person, and you are not having enough children. So in the end, what will happen? Islam will eat you up. So people need to wake up, really.
Yeah. Just before I take this question here, I had a cycle through Sweden a few years ago, and I arrived in Stockholm, and I basically cycled through a large part of Stockholm, and I was shocked that in the middle of the summer there was a big Islamic festival going on. It was so weird. It was like a complete takeover of the city. Totally anathema to the values of Sweden. So yeah, I don't know what to make of it. I think it's good to be tolerant, but it's also you have a duty and a right to protect your culture as well, I think.
Yeah, if you do not have an identity, you have an identity crisis, then you will not have a nation, you will not have a people. This is what's going on.
Okay, so let's have a look at Ricardo's question. How did early and moderate Muslims deal with Islam's cruel and warped views of women and their heaven, Jannat brothel? Any thoughts on that one?
I don't know if there were moderate Muslims the way you think back in the day. I think this is very new. So it didn't really matter back in the day.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
Okay. Now, another question. Has there been a change in the percentage of polygamy in the Muslim world? Well, just talking to Muslims, it's only anecdotal, but it seems to be that polygamy is no longer part of the norm any longer. It seems to be dying out. That's my take on it. From the limited
multiple wives.
Yeah. Doesn't seem to be as strong as it used to be. But what would that be true from your point of view, Murad?
Yes, but why? First of all, is that people do not have enough money for that. The second thing is the laws are not as easy as before. The laws are more secular, even in the Middle East. That's the reason.
Yeah. If they had lashings of money, they would probably keep going with that. But I think that's a good thing. My biggest sort of concern is actually the welfare of women in the Middle East and how they're treated in that system. It's a lot of broken human relationships going on, and that's really horrible. And it feeds into the society, and like husbands just treating their wives badly, their children not speaking respectfully to their mothers as a result of what they see at home and stuff like that, and then it just carries on from generation to generation. So hopefully we're beginning to see a movement in a different direction. I don't know if you wanted to say anything more on that score.
No, we can take another question.
Yeah, a Muslim names are named Kinney Bomer, who calls us swine of a humankind, claims that Yahweh is not Allah. Can you explain that? God bless you both. Well, I'd be happy if he thinks Yahweh is not Allah.
No problem.
Job done. No problem. He can call that all day. It's interesting when it suits. They say they're not the same, but on another occasion they would argue the opposite. I just want to say thank you very much to 321. Love walking the talk. Was that from you? Same one, was it? Thank you very much for that.
I love the Crusader avatar.
Oh yeah. Thank you very much. That's very kind of you.
Everyone needs to be like this.
Yeah. Right. There may not be polygamy, but divorce and remarriage rate is ridiculous. Okay. A woman must tolerate abuse because many younger virgins are available. Just out of curiosity, daughter of Al Messiah, did we have a talk months ago on Zoom off air? Just let me know. And if so, would you be willing to come on air at some stage in the future? Because you have an amazing story. If you just let me know, I'd love to have you on at some stage. Yeah. Okay. Excellent explanation of leftism and atheism. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you see on YouTube, I have like a sensor on my mouth. If you want the real stuff, then go to BitChute.
Fantastic. I just got a message back from daughter of Al Messiah. We did. Just let me know if you'd like to record at some stage in the coming weeks. Guys, you've no idea what a fantastic story she has. I would love to have you on. And actually, it fits in with some of the work that we did about a year ago, I think now, about the demonic and the early Islam. But if you'd like to, let me know. Obviously, you may not want to come on publicly, but if you want to do that, I'd be more than happy to arrange that with you. What's this here? Elon Musk stated AI will replace 60% of all jobs in 15 years. That's a scary prospect.
Elon Musk is not the real problem, but I will not give more details here.
Yeah. I don't think he was stating this in a positive sense. I think he's very fearful of the dangers with AI coming in. I think the problem, this is the catch-22 for businesses. If they want to have people out there who can buy their products, they've got to employ people. You know, it's all well having everything being done by robots, but then if people don't have work, they're not going to buy the product. So I think
but the people on the top, they like AI more because AI will not make a revolution.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
that's the idea.
Yeah. So I'm just scanning the. So just if daughter of Al Masih, if you send me an email, just let me know if you'd be up for that. Just to share your testimony if you want to, that would be brilliant. I think it'd be fabulous.
It seems she is from an Arabic background, so this is.
It's amazing. It's amazing, her story. It's something I must do more of. Is actually hear from those who've seen it from both sides. You know.
Yes, and if people have like an effect from Sneakers Corner, only from Sneakers Corner, or particularly from Sneakers Corner, then they could also contact and hear their story if you like.
Yeah. Actually, do you know what I'd read?
Something that we have never experienced before.
Yeah, we haven't really heard of what the impact of our work is. You know, we do our videos and then it goes out into the ether. We don't really know what impact. What I'd love to hear is from people in places like Syria, Iraq, Iran. Are people aware of this material that we're putting out there, or is it just a tiny little group of people? Is it having an impact? Are people talking about it on the ground? I'd love to hear that kind of stuff. Hopefully not for any egotistical feelings, but to see, is it actually having an impact or not? I think Jay Smith's channel is having a huge impact at the minute. I see St. Murad is occupied. I think he's quiet at the minute. But I don't know if people have noticed, but on the Dawa channels, ironically, they have started using the standard Islamic narrative Sen, which I find hilarious that they've actually picked up on this. It's become such a buzzword that now they're using it, and it's so ironic considering, you know, Sen, they're acknowledging it's a Sen in a way. But they'll probably start regretting using it later, because as we start unpacking the fact that there's not even a one standard Islamic narrative, there's a whole series of them, according to Lloyd de Young. Yeah, Veronica says that is hilarious. So it's interesting, you know, the Dawa teams are pricking up their ears. They are listening to what's going on. They're trying their best to counteract what's being sent out there. I think that I don't know if you've been watching Fander films of late, but I think over the past 2 or 3 months in particular, it's the standard Islamic narrative is getting so many heavy hits, and it's unrelenting. Odin's work over the past few weeks has been outstanding. Paul Ellis's work deserves mention. Thanks very much for the super chat again. That's very kind of you. Could you explain shortly how Yahweh isn't the God of the Quran? Thanks. I think that's probably.
That's a very long story.
That's a long story. I think that's probably one where we need to do a bit of homework first to bring it all together. I wouldn't be able to do it off the off the top of my head. Murad, I think it's probably a good time to stop. What do you think?
Yes, but in the end, I wanna tell Veronica that we would love to have her on. This is the woman that really knows how to correct me in the comments. That
Yeah,
was very. I didn't expect that. So
yeah,
she is very knowledgeable.
absolutely, yeah. So
And
Veronica, if you fancy coming on, obviously you don't have to be on camera if you don't want to. You can be off camera. But if you fancy doing that, let us know.
yeah, and also people, I want them to check my new Patreon. They do not have to pledge if they want, but just follow me there because this boosts the algorithm. This makes my name appear more because it's very new. So just do that if you like.
Yeah, yeah, and thanks to Orthodox Empire for mentioning Al Fadi's channel. There's good material to debunk sin now there. Yeah, so it's fantastic. Al Fadi, I think, is on 100,000 subscribers at this stage, which is amazing. He's literally shot up so much over the past year. Jay's channel, he's on 57,000 subs. I think when I started working with Jay on his channel, I think he was below 20,000 subscribers. I think he might have been even 10. So it's amazing how much both of those channels have shot up. So it's all good. I think their format is really appealing, and it's very watchable and very shareable. You know, it's different to what I typically do. I'm trying to keep up the whole sneakers corner persona, below radar stuff, you know. But it's good to have it all out there as well, you know.
Veronica says, "Thank you, Murad and Mel. I will think about it." No, don't just think about it.
Do it.
Yeah, you thought about it for a long time already. You
Yeah.
need to come on here, and I
Yeah.
see also Kafir Linda.
Yeah.
She always misses the live stream. No problem. Just watch it there.
Yeah. Well, you caught the tail end of it. Yeah. So that's it. It's been good. We covered a fair bit of ground. I'm sorry to anyone whose question I may have missed. Hopefully, I've got the bulk of the questions there. It's been a long live stream, but thank you so much for turning up. Just in terms of plans for the coming weeks, I hope to have Lloyd de Jong back again. We'll hopefully do a program on the different series if he's up for that, just to give us a little taste of what's in there. I think he may have something else. I can't remember that he mentioned that he was going to do as well. The other thing I want to do is trying to remember what was the other thing I was going to say. Yes, there's more work on the different images and figurines from across the Silk Road. So I'm going to be showing you what the Sogdians looked like versus the Arabs, so we can build up a picture. And I think it would be nice to have a timeline and maybe a map so we could see what the clothing, the look of the different people going from west to east. I think that would be useful to help us sort of identify the different ethnicities in the art. I think that would be kind of helpful. There's also something else that I want to do, which is to do with symbolic pictures in the Sana manuscripts and a link with Petra. So that should be interesting. I haven't made any start on that, but hopefully I will do something on that soon. Just to help, number one, Yahweh doesn't mean they can divorce their girl wives. Okay, well, that's a good start there. Okay, so I think that's probably a good time to stop there. Thanks a lot, everyone, for showing up. I hope you found the discussion interesting and useful and so on. And thank you to all the super chat people. Thank you very much for your kind support. Much appreciated. Okay. Any final words, Murad?
Well, I just want to thank the people and thank you very much for the super chat and thank you all for joining. So I really enjoy this interaction more than just making videos. So that's why every now and then. Maybe in the future we will make more of this.
Yeah. Okay, so see you everyone. Talk to you very soon. Bye-bye.